Hello, my name is Neil Ticktin. I'm the editor-in-chief and publisher of MacTech Magazine. We're here this week with TUAW and MacTech Magazine together interviewing developers at the Worldwide Developer Conference 2011 in San Francisco. With us now is Brendan Clavin from Tetras, and thank you for joining us in here.
Neil, nice to meet you. Thanks for having me in for this interview.
Oh, anytime. Let's start off with a little bit of background on you and Tetras, and just let's give people an idea of what you guys do.
Sure. So Tetras is an app localization company. We take apps, iOS, Mac, even Android apps, if I can say that at the WWDC,
you can.
And we translate them into other languages for developers.
Okay.
And this is important. It's the growth area for apps, and it's the growth area right now for Apple. Over 50% of their sales come from international. They're experiencing great growth in China, 250% growth in iPhone sales in Q1, and as I said, over 50% of their revenue. So the opportunities now for the app developers are to get their apps into non-English languages and into the hands of the non-English speaking consumers.
Great. So, do you take, I guess for a developer who, and we have plenty of developers who read MacTech and who are at WWDC and who read TUAW as well. For a developer, one of their biggest opportunities for growth, once they've have their product that they've developed, that they've made successful, that they've sold in the US and maybe in Canada and certain parts of Canada maybe, and maybe not other parts of Canada, but I guess one of the big areas of growth for a developer would be to go localize it and take it into another region. Have you seen any numbers as to how much developers have been able to grow once they've taken that kind of step?
So we have one customer who recently started working with us, and he had already localized his app into Japanese with another company. And he told me when he came to use our service that he had seen 2.4x growth by localizing his app into Japanese.
Wow.
And the language that he picked to do with us was Italian, because he had a lot of interest in the app in Italy.
Right.
So he translated with us, and I just had him come to a meetup last week, and where he shared with us that the cost of localizing his app into Italian paid for itself in 2 days with Italian sales.
Wow.
So
consumer app, business app?
It's a game.
It's a game.
It's a game. Yeah, yeah. It's I guess I can mention it. It's Hit Tennis too, and the developer he spoke at the meetup, and we'll publish that.
Right.
But yeah, so that's just one example.
Do you think that's kind of a typical experience for people, that the return on localization is very quick?
It depends on the app, and we're a startup, and I don't have enough customers to give you, yes, here is the chart. We expect within a few months that we'll have those numbers where we can go out and definitively say how much you're going to grow. I'll go back to the Japanese example, and we didn't translate that app for him. I'm not surprised. Japan and Korea tend to be walled gardens, and France tends to be a little bit of a walled garden as well, and so they want the apps in their native language. They don't want
France, I think, if I remember right, there's laws about you have to have at least like the product literature, or if you're doing a box shot, the box has to be to some extent in French. There are certain things that have to be in French when you're selling a product into that market.
Yeah, I'm not actually aware of that, and you're the second person this week who said that to me. I don't know about that in France, but in Canada, if you're selling into government or into education, and we're talking here maybe more about the enterprise side as opposed to the app side, you have to have your literature and your documentation and your app in French as well as English. So I don't quite know if there's any laws out there geared at the app developers and the app store that you have to be in that language.
I don't know about that. I'm talking about laws more like there's French law in place, as I remember, or at least there was some time ago, that you actually had to have certain pieces of what you were doing in French. Now, you didn't have to localize the whole product. Your product just wouldn't sell as well if you didn't localize the whole product.
Exactly, yeah.
So we'll come back to this more in a moment here, but just briefly, is there anything in the keynote that you really felt, what did you think of the keynote address? Are you excited about what you saw? And is there anything there that really kind of affects what you guys are doing?
The keynote was great, lots of great information. Nothing really that affects us. I want to get my hands on Lion. I want to download that and just see, have they added more languages? I'm looking forward to iOS 5 coming out and seeing, did they add more language support in the device for that. So there are things that I don't know, it wasn't spoken about specifically in the keynote, but when I take a look at these new releases, I'll know, because if it opens up new markets and maybe more complex languages, it definitely will affect our business, and it shows that Apple are serious about those markets and going into those markets.
I'm just curious, of all the languages out there that are not supported by Apple right now, what would be like the top one you'd like to see?
I've had a few requests for Thai, and Thai, yeah, I believe Thai is not. Oh, I have to check that. It's Thai. We've had a number of requests, and I don't think Thai is handled very well in iOS.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay, so back to what you guys do here. Is there, a lot of developers, when they think about localization, they think about, okay, well, I just open up the UI and make some changes, and oh yeah, I just need to make some menus, do the right thing, and it's pretty easy, and I'm off, and should be no more than 2-3 hours work, right?
Yes, if you do it right from the beginning. Yes, no, so I'll precursor localization, which is translation, and indeed localization encompasses more than translation. So translation is getting the actual text and translating into another language. Localization is making sure that text fits within the confines of the device, and iOS is a tighter confines than, say, Mac OS. And so localization is about testing, it's about making sure the translators are translating in context and so on. Before you start translating at all or localizing, you have to internationalize your app or prepare your app so that it will work in any region of the world, regardless of whether it's translated or not. And so getting back to your question about what the developer needs to do, well, Xcode is very good in providing the infrastructure for developers to get their content ready for translation. So basically every asset, so it could be an XIB file, it could be an image, it could be a sound, all of those files are localizable within Xcode, and you basically go and say, you want to add these languages for this particular file. And it does all the magic in the Finder, in the file system, exactly. So you basically take all your assets and you say, I want to do this in French, German, Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. It creates the directory structure underneath. And then the developer's job, once that's done, is to go out and buy translation services or localization services to populate those directories with the translations.
So the internationalization of the application is the most difficult thing and the most time-consuming thing. But once you got that framework in place, doing the localization and the testing of it is less work. And to come in and use a company like Tetras to help a developer doing it becomes a very cost-effective kind of thing to be able to do. I mean,
it does indeed. And one of the things that I left Google to start this company. I worked for Google up until January 2010. I've been building automated services and localization tools and frameworks for companies such as Google for about 20 years, and I just saw the shift in the profile of the app developer.
Come way down.
90% of the developers on the App Store today are in teams of 5 or less, and I'd say it's probably 95%. And so they don't have the luxury of having localization engineering department or project managers to manage the translation of their apps. So the traditional companies out there and some of the web services or the websites that provide localization services, you upload strings to them and they give you back strings. But you still then have to put all of those into the appropriate place.
And do all the testing.
And then do all the testing or send the build out to somebody. And so one of the things that we've done is that we take your en.l project directory or english.l project directory, which is the English bucket. It's the bucket in which the developer keeps enhancing his UI or adding features or so on. We take that and we translate that into all those languages, and we've built tools that allow the translators to translate and edit the XIB, the layout files if you're using XIBs, so that when they deliver back the translations, they fit into the XIB. So they do sort of the localization engineering for you. And so the translations come back and they fit. So you build them back into your product, and you got your multiple languages. And one of the things that our service does is we allow developers to upload their content to us as a zip file. And all we need is your English content. We translate it and give you back your French, your German, your Japanese. When you make changes to that English content in a week or a month, and you tweak an XIB, or you add a new button, or you remove some strings, you just send us your English content again. We tell you what you've changed. So we have a massive diffing engine, and we rebuild.
And that way you know exactly what needs to be changed. You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
And once you upload your content, within about 2 or 3 minutes, we tell you the price. So it's not 24 hours come back to us, somebody's looked at this, we've built the machinery to do this. So we built the machinery to do this at scale, and we have less people involved between the developer and the translator. We don't have project managers, we don't have localization engineers, so we can pass that cost saving on to the developer with a high quality translation. I'll add one more thing. So in terms of integrating with Tetras, you can also check your English.l project content into SVN. in the cloud.
Right.
Not your entire directory or
Right, right.
repository, but just
Right.
that content.
Right.
And Tetris will pull that from SVN. So you don't even have to do the zipping
Right.
of the
So if you're
files.
going to be doing a lot of applications or
Right.
doing a lot of development
Right.
work, this is really making life easy.
And I demonstrated last week, pre-release code, that we have an API and we have an interface. Right now it's in terminal that talks to the Tetris service. So eventually we'll, and I'm going across to speak to the developers, the Xcode tools guys, after this interview, to talk to them about
being a part of Xcode.
So it's being a part of Xcode.
Yeah.
And I'd love to work with Apple and have them integrate it, or I'm going to open source the code. It's not a tool that I'm selling. It's just, it will make it easier for you to come and integrate with our service.
It's a pleasure having you with us, and I'm glad you were able to join us and tell us a little bit about what Tetris is doing.
Yeah.
My name is Neil Ticktin. I'm the editor-in-chief and publisher of MacTech Magazine, and we've been here this week with Tua MacTech Together, interviewing developers at WWDC 2011 in San Francisco. Thank you for watching.